Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of comic books comes an iconic film featuring one of the most popular and legendary heroes of all time, an alien of immense power fighting to protect humanity in a world that is not his own. We're talking about Superman the movie. Superman the movie was directed by Richard Donner on a story by Mario Puzo and was released in the United States on December 15, 1978. It was distributed in the United States by Warner Brothers Pictures. The film focuses on Superman, a fictional character created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, appearing in DC Comics. Superman's origin story is told as a young child sent to Earth from the doomed planet Krypton, who was found by an elderly Midwest couple and raised as their own. The boy, named Clark Kent, soon discovers that he has incredible powers thanks to Earth's yellow sun. However, he is taught by his parents to never take advantage of his abilities, thus keeping him grounded and connected to his own humanity. After the death of his father, Clark finds a strange glowing green crystal which he takes to the Arctic and uses to construct the Fortress of Solitude. There he learns about his heritage from his birth father and about the destruction of Krypton. Clark emerges from the fortress wearing a costume emblazoned with his family's crest, thus beginning the next chapter of his life. Clark travels to Metropolis where he gets a job with the Daily Planet. There he meets Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, and he begins to live life as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, while also keeping the world safe as Superman. But Superman soon crosses paths with a criminal mastermind that will eventually become his greatest foe, Lex Luthor. Luthor hatches a plan that involves buying worthless real estate in the desert, then reprogramming two missiles to sink part of the country into the ocean while maintaining control of the new West Coast. It's up to the Man of Steel to stop him. Superman the movie was a smash with critics and moviegoers alike, setting all-time industry records in the United States upon its release. It grossed over $300 million on a budget of $55 million and spawned 3 sequels. Thanks to the story, the iconic characters, and the action, Superman the movie remains a favorite of fans all over the world and is widely regarded as arguably the greatest comic book movie of all time. And that's the lowdown on Superman the movie. For a lot of comic book fans out there, the discussion begins and ends with one guy, Superman. That's it. Love him or hate him, love DC or hate it, love the DC Extended Universe, or perhaps are not that fond of it. It begins and ends with Superman. Now, of course, a lot of this commentary depends upon your opinion of the creative forces at the time, how certain writers handle him, how certain artists draw him. But a lot of it, of course, has to do with how's he handling the cartoons in the animated world, how's he handled in the movies, how's he handled on TV. And there's been more than one Superman, of course, out there, counting the animated voices and whatnot. There's been different guys to wear the cape, to wear the S on their chest. It's a big responsibility. But in our world, guys like us where we hang out, we have conversations about this guy all the time. This is just something that comes across our minds at any given point. If you're a nerd, if you're not a nerd, it's going to be hard for me to explain it to you. But it's comic books, it's pro wrestling, it's music, it's TV, it's streaming services, it's all of the above, and maybe a lot more than that. So yeah, the topic of Superman comes up, and it's usually the who would win in a fight, Superman or Thor, Superman or Wolverine, all that other fun stuff. The movies always come up. Yes, we've covered the DC Extended Universe here on the 6M. No, it's not always favorable, but we don't hold back here. We give honest opinions and we give honest critiques, but we also gush when the time comes to gush, as our own personal opinions come into play. Having said all of that, I'm ready to do some gushing over Superman the movie. We're talking about the original, of course, from 1978. No, this is not a watch-along, although it very well could have been, but that would have been a long show, kids. But man, what a classic. And Phil, I've said this many times on this show. I grew up with not a whole lot to watch in terms of comic book stuff. It was years. I mean, it was, let's see, 11 years after this movie that we finally got Michael Keaton's Batman. I mean, that tells you something. 11 years it took to get Batman to the silver screen. That's a big deal. But dude, everything for me begins and ends with this film. And I rewatched it again for the first time 2 days ago. Haven't watched it in a while. I've seen it God knows how many times over the years. Does this film hold up for you, man? Because for me, this film totally holds up.
I think all of the high notes of the movie definitely hold up. There's some things that I forgot. I mean, like right before we started recording, I forgot how long it was.
Yes.
And some of the some of the beginning of the movie does feel a bit dated to me, but that's just because partially because I haven't seen it in a while, and that it just was a different time period. It doesn't seem like it, but that was what almost 30 years ago.
Yeah. 1978, man. Long time. Um, I was but a wee lad, and Star Wars Episode 4 came out a year prior to this, so that kind of got the ball rolling for the whole sci-fi big screen epic blockbuster film, and this film was no different. Man, I'm with you. Some of it is dated, I'll grant you, but for me, this film holds up. I still feel like, and we haven't even got into it, and this feels like something I'd say at the end. I still feel as though they're trying to do this movie again. I feel like they're still trying to make this caliber movie. And it's not that the special effects are fantastic. For the day they were, absolutely cutting edge. The flying scenes, the wire work they did with Chris Reeve. But dude, for me, it's Christopher Reeve that makes this film. I that and Phil, we've discussed many times here on the show before about, well, if they could have got this guy to play him, how different would it have been? There's nobody else but Christopher Reeve for this. I mean, he's just, if we could have cloned the guy and kept bringing the clone back as Superman, that would have been awesome. No disrespect to Henry Cavill, but Christopher Reeve is my guy. Man, he makes this entire movie, doesn't he?
Oh, for sure. I think for several reasons, the movie is kind of like the quintessential depiction of Superman for a lot of people. And I think for most part, it's because of Christopher Reeve's portrayal.
He's so good. And a lot of the stuff he does is nuanced. It's kind of with a wink and a nod. He never, as hokey as the character could be, he takes it seriously, but he doesn't at the same time. To me, if that's possible, it almost feels like he's in on the joke. And so he's kind of like a wink and a nod to the audience. We're like, hey, where I'm wearing a suit. We know what this is. This is a kid's thing, but I'm gonna play it straight. And man, I don't know about you, dude. He never feels insincere. He feels like a real honest to God person wearing this suit.
Yeah, for sure. I think he brings a level of dignity to the role. Um, I never feel like he is. I never feel like he's hamming it up in the suit. Or I never feel like he looks like he's uncomfortable in the role. He just, I don't know. He just brings a level of dignity to the role that I think has become like the standard for playing a superhero.
Dignity is the best word. I don't know if I could have said that any better. He like I said, he plays it straight. And dude, if you're gonna play a comic book character like Chris Evans, had Chris Evans not took this seriously, had he done it tongue in cheek, Captain America never would have worked. And we talk about pivotal roles and guys who could only play him. Downey could only have been Tony Stark and Iron Man. There's no one else. Evans could only have been Cap. Christopher Reeve could only have been Superman. To me, it's that defining of a role for him. Um, I can't get out of my head just how good the guy is, and I'm sure that for years after this, he tried to live it down and do other things, and he did a lot of acting over the years during his career, but nothing compared to this because of the effect it had, the worldwide effect it had, the impact it had. I mean, the whole idea of hope. I mean, the tagline for this movie was "You will believe a man can fly." And it's like even the poster of it, of this, the original release is great. It says everything it needs to say. Um, he's just, I can't gush about him enough. He's fantastic. He got ripped. There's no foam muscles in the suit, kids. That's all Chris Reeve. The guy put on like 30 pounds of muscle. Um, Trained and worked out with David Prowse, of course, we know as Darth Vader, who was himself a bodybuilder in England before he became an actor. I mean, That's pretty cool to say that Darth Vader trained Superman. Got in the gym with Superman. That's pretty cool. I mean, dude, it's funny to me sometimes when I think about it. Like over the years, we've seen a lot of different actors and actresses wearing a lot of padded suits. But the guy that started the whole thing, that's really him in that suit. There's no chest piece. There's no nothing for his abs. It's all him, dude. That in and of itself is mind blowing to me, man.
Yeah, I think it's not just how he played the role. I just think it's how he looked in a suit. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. He just looked like he was like chiseled out of granite. He just looked he looked like unreal. Like when I go back and look at it now, it's like he just jumps off the screen.
It's almost like he's wearing a piece underneath the suit to accentuate his body, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Like for years, I actually thought he was, and turns out he's not. That's all him. He's all man. It's crazy. Yeah, you're right. And dude, talk to me about the suit, man. Uh, Supposedly, the story is that the suit was supposed to have been a darker blue, but when they did that and screen tested it, it was going to become transparent because they were using blue screen, not green screen, for visual effects. What do you think about the colors of the suit, the way the suit's designed? Does it work, and does the suit hold up all these years later?
I think it holds up really well. I think it is very simple. Um, I think one of my things with a lot of the newer superhero costumes, I feel like a lot of times they're over designed. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is it's just what it is. It's the Superman suit. Like all of the cover colors pop because they're bright. Um, it doesn't try to go, hey, this is like some super textured alien technology to make it look like actual cloth, but it's just cloth. Like, no, it's okay if it's just cloth. It's 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 tight.
Dude, it's funny to your point. Like going back to 78, you would think, well, it's more simplistic. But you would think if they were going to screw it up, it would have been this movie that they would have screwed it up. They would have overthunk it, but they didn't. They just said, put the guy in cloth, it'll be fine. But now we overthink it so much in Hollywood. Like it's funny how that it kind of feels like it should be in maybe reverse to some degree. But yeah, they just put him in whatever worked, man. That's pretty cool. Um, Something I found, and of course, folks, this is all over the net. So go do your research as we did here. A lot of the top actors of the day, their names were thrown around for this role: Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, James Caan, Burt Reynolds, dude, even Muhammad Ali, if you can believe this. Which I didn't know if the guy was ever interested in acting. That would have been amazing to see Muhammad Ali as Superman. Um, one of the Salkinds, I think it was Ilya Salkind, was keen on maybe giving him a shot. Man, that would have been what a different movie that would have been. I don't know how serious the talks were, and of course, as I said, they went after every good-looking A-lister that there was at the time, and he's definitely one of those guys. Um, Eastwood seems to be a logical choice, but he was booked at the time and couldn't do it. James Caan reportedly said, "There's no way I'm getting into that silly suit." James Caan's had a pretty good career for. I don't think he needs to worry about it. But Robert Redford as Superman would have been an interesting choice.
Yeah, I don't know
So
if I could picture that. That's kind of weird.
yeah, a blonde. Well, he would have had to dye his hair black. But Paul Newman was supposedly offered his choice of Superman, Lex Luthor, or Jor El for the to the tune of $4 million, and he said, "No thanks, not interested in any of it." Stallone wanted the part, and supposedly was deemed too Italian. I don't think that would fly today,
Whew.
and it shouldn't have flew then, but that was the story. So that would have been different as well. Um, yeah, I don't know. He was, and again, talking about Reeve, he was the first actor to specifically work out and add muscle for a superhero role. Um, a lot of, as we said before, a lot of times it's padded muscles and whatnot. But yeah, it's crazy. And talking about what you said earlier about not just the integrity he brought to the role, but and the way he carried himself, the way the suit fit him, the way he wore it, how the cape hung just the right level, just the right length, and everything about it looked great. Um, does he get enough credit for his work as Clark Kent? Because man, he's a completely different person when he's Clark Kent in this movie.
I do think another part of of the movie and his portrayal that is good is because of the duality between him and Superman in both roles. And I do think sometimes we get so stuck into, oh, he was such a great Superman, but I do think he's a great Clark and a great Superman.
Yeah, absolutely. He supposedly based the performance of the Clark Kent character on Cary Grant from Bringing Up Baby, and I can totally see that because that's it. I didn't know that until now, but looking back on it, I totally get that. And as we said, there's stories out there like crazy about this guy, about in the role and playing the character. And one of the stories that Roger Moore, who was Bond, he was my Bond growing up. Phil Roger Moore was my Bond, so he was the guy I knew. But he told a story of working on set, and they were all in like the cafeteria on the studios like parking lot, I guess, where the studios are. And Christopher Reeve is there for lunch in full costume, I guess, cape and everything. And as he's walking through the cafeteria, the women are swooning, obviously, and they're going nuts and they're whispering and smiling and just all over him and stuff as he's walking by. And Reeve doesn't know it. He's there to eat. He's not there to really talk to anybody. He comes back at some point the next day or whenever it was as Clark. No one noticed him, which is very telling. You don't even recognize Christopher Reeve. He's one of you. He's one of your people, and like that to me says a lot about the way he carried himself. And dude, like he hunched his shoulders as Clark. His tone of voice got higher. He's bumbling. He's stumbling. He's running into things. He's clumsy. I just, dude, if he couldn't pull that off, if he couldn't pull off the Clark Kent that he pulled off, would this movie has have been as entertaining and as charming as it was?
I don't know. I definitely think it proved that he was more than just some guy coming in to play a superhero. It proved that he was a great actor because I mean, man, the way that he managed to make both portrayals so different, and I the way that he managed to make it convincing that he could just put on glasses and change his hairstyle and nobody would soon be Superman is quite a feat.
Yeah, that's insane. And the scene that I'm thinking of is when they go for that flight at night, and when they come back, and he's going to flat out tell her. He's decided, I'm falling in love with this girl. I'm going to tell her. And he takes his glasses off, and dude, he immediately straightens up, and suddenly he's a different person. And I'm like, that right there is one of the best things I've ever seen. Like, just that very subtle move where his shoulders are hunched, but he suddenly straightens up, stiff as a board, and he's Superman again. And he's like, Lois, I want to tell you something. And then he chickens out. He decides he can't tell her. I mean, I love that there was that much friction in this movie already. Like, it didn't take long to get to that point where he's already conflicted about this. Um, we're talking a lot about him, folks, and we should because Christopher Reeve was the man. What about Margot Kidder as Lois Lane, Phil? What's your take on the Lois that we got from this film?
I think she's great. I think she's great at playing down, being a woman in distress because Lois is never a woman in distress. But I think the moments when she's in distress, she plays those well. But I think she also gets like the dynamic of the city girl and this country guy. Um, I think she gets that perfectly because she has all of the I don't want to say callousness, but kind of like the sass of a city slicker.
She really does. And she does not look to me like a damsel in distress. She doesn't look to me as a love interest, to be honest with you. She looks to me as that, like you said, that sassy, cynical, streetwise, street smart gal, the reporter type, and she like doesn't take crap from anybody. been to the bad part of town, lived to tell about it. She's not afraid to confront somebody, as a reporter in those days, that day and age, should have been. I love her too. I think she's perfect in that role. I just imagine, what things would have been like had it not been the two of them. But dude, they look, and maybe it's because we've seen them together in more than one film of this franchise. That did become a franchise after all. But they just look like they fit. And man, again, I go back to that scene where he takes her flying. When they sit down and he is immediately flirting with her in full costume, immediately flirting with her like he's a shy 18-year-old. And it's perfect. She's feeding into it and she's spellbound by him and he's captivating. And dude, I'd forgotten how flirtatious Superman as a character was until I watched this. I'm like, he's not even trying hard, Phil. He's just, this stuff's coming naturally to him. And if it's not, he is an amazing actor because it feels like it's coming naturally. We've never seen a portrayal of Superman since this movie, in my opinion, that even measures up to this. What do you think?
Uh, no, I think if we don't get the stuff earlier in the movie where we see how annoyed that he was that he couldn't be himself around anyone, and we get him, in costume, and he can just be whoever he wants. He can be open with his powers, and he can, be as confident and likable as he's ever wanted to be as a teenager. And I think he nails that in the scenes with Lois.
That's a good point. Like Jonathan Kent wouldn't allow him to do things. He couldn't play sports. A lot of the stuff that they did in this movie, of course, it's from the source material too, folks, from the comics, obviously, but couldn't play sports. But they've adapted a lot of that to the TV shows, Smallville, and to the Lois and Clark, and uh, uh, several different iterations of the character over the years. The retread, Superman Returns, and then the Henry Cavill stuff with the DC Extended Universe. But a lot of those themes are still playing out. And to your point, man, like he wasn't allowed to sort of, sow his oats maybe, and so he didn't really get to finally be free and be himself until the suit went on, which kind of goes back to DC's whole penchant for, eh, this guy isn't the real guy. He's only the real guy when he's wearing the suit. Like we've heard that stuff for years about Bruce. Well, there's no Bruce Wayne. There's only Batman. I'm like, that's cool and all, but I'm kind of more intrigued by about the Bruce Wayne part of it. That's the guy's story I want to hear. Like, how does he maintain? How does he keep it together? How does Clark Kent keep it together? How does he not tell the whole world? How does he have relationships with people who he calls close friends in his inner circle who don't know who he is? That to me is, in my opinion, a more interesting story. Um, what about the relationships in this movie? Because there's him, there's Lois, there's Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen is as cookie cutter of a Jimmy Olsen as anything we've ever seen from the comics, dude. Did you remember how, for lack of a better word, hokey he could be at times in this movie?
No, I definitely forgot. He's very campy, and he's very much like what you would expect that character to be if you were used to the older depiction of the character.
Yeah. And, no disrespect to him. I think he did great. But it was exactly what the role called for. It's not like he was doing anything out of character because the 1930s, 40s, 50s era Jimmy Olsen, I'm sure, sounded exactly like this. But, in 1978, is there really a dude running around with a bow tie like that? And he's all shucks, Miss Lane, and all this stuff. I don't know. It's interesting. But I don't know, he's the whole concept, Phil, of Superman, whoever is close to this guy, his close friends always need help. Like there was a book, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen was the name of the book. Like the full title of the book. It was a monthly book from DC. But like he has to save Lois, he's got to save Jimmy. He's got to go back and save Lois, but then he's got to go save Jimmy and Lois. Then he's got to go save just Jimmy. Like these two get in trouble constantly. And man, at some point it kind of feels like Superman's nothing but 911 for these folks. Like they just, and plus didn't they have like signal watches in the comics where like if something was wrong, all they had to do was hit a button on their watch and he'd just come running?
Yeah, I think Jimmy did have that.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, like I said, it is what it is. Mark McClure as Jimmy Olsen. So there you go. Um, yeah, he was also Dave McFly. He was Marty's brother in the Back to the Future films. So that's cool. Yeah, I think he does as well as can be expected here. Um, let's talk about first of all. Let's talk about the dad, the baby daddy for Clark. Well, Kal-El. Marlon Brando wanted more money than God, and he got it. He wanted the best of everything, and he got it. He wanted his own shooting schedule, and he got that as well. They threw so much at this cat to make him happy, man. Like Marlon Brando as Jor-El. The best Jor-El or nah? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think to most people he's gonna be seen as the best Jor-El because he's the quintessential Jor-El for some people. Like what
Mhm.
for a lot of us that grew up, that was Jor-El. Like that's the only Jor-El we knew.
Um, what do you think? Has anyone ever done it better than him? I mean, I mean, there's been other guys do it, but like Russell Crowe was Jor-El. Hey, you know.
Nah, I got nah, nah, I got to go with Marlon Brando on this one.
Yeah.
I just think that I think he brings gravitas to it that I don't think that we get from anybody else. I think he brings a serious tone to it, kind of in the same way that I said earlier that Reeves brings dignity to the role. Like I never feel like he is, phoning it in any of his voice appearances in the movie.
Mhm. Had they made this movie in '68 instead of '78, is Marlon Brando Superman?
I don't know, maybe, but you
Because, like you
you gotta
said, the
imagine he was
gravitas.
making so much money then.
Very true. What about Krypton? Not Krypton. Krypton. It's like Lando calling Han Han throughout the entire Star Wars universe. I mean, I wonder if anyone corrected him. Did they tell him, "Hey, Marlon, it's actually Krypton."
I'm sure no one told
It's,
him.
I'm sure no one told him. It's not a deal breaker. I just found it amusing that through the entire movie, it's Krypton. Um, I don't know if anyone else could have done this. He was great. He did make it feel bigger. He did phone it in, but if this is an example of a guy phoning it in, he was insanely talented. So he could phone it in and you'd never know it. He didn't want to memorize all the dialogue of what he said as they put baby Kal-El into the ship. So he wrote all of it down on the baby's diaper.
What? I did not
So
know that.
yes, so when they put the baby in the rocket and he's looking down, he's just reading his lines. And he tells Richard Donner, well, it'll be more natural if I don't memorize it and it'll just be, I'm thinking, you just don't want to memorize it. Shut up. Like you don't even want to read. Did he even read the script? I wonder. It's good stuff. Who would get away with that in 2021? I wonder. Who could possibly get away with something like that? Pacino, maybe?
Uh, yeah, probably maybe Pacino. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, is Gene Hackman the best Lex Luthor of all time?
I don't know if I would say he's the best Lex, but I do think that he became he became the prototype for all of the comic book movie villains because they all tried to
Mm-hmm.
do this hokey, hammed up version of a bad guy that Gene kind of brought to this role.
And much, very, very different than what we saw on Smallville, the series. Michael Rosenbaum is fantastic. Did you get into Smallville when it was on?
I did. Yeah, that's why I say I don't know if I would say he's the best Lex. I definitely think that he was influential in terms of what he brought to the role. Because I mean, you could look at so many superhero movies, so many comic book franchises where somebody tried to do the Hackman stuff. I mean, man,
Yeah,
as good as Kevin Spacey is, and I hate to bring up Kevin Spacey because some of the things he's
yeah.
accused of, but if you look at how he played the role in Superman Returns, it's so heavily influenced by Gene Hackman. Um, and I think Kevin Spacey does a great job in that movie. He's one of the few bright spots in that movie. Um, but you could just tell that he's playing Gene Hackman in a role.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Absolutely. And I'm with you. I hate to bring the guy up too, but it's totally true. And what about the idea, Phil? Because it was fleshed out in the comics for years prior to this, I believe, but of course, many years after this, it was firmly established. Because at one point, Lex is president, which kind of actually happened, folks. So he had a lot more hair, or doesn't, depending on who you believe. But what about this idea of in this movie, he's just a shyster. He's a con man. He's a criminal. He's a thug. He's just he's one of those guys who's got underlings under him. He's not a savvy, ruthless corporate tycoon. I mean, why not go that route for this movie?
I don't know. That's a good question because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they thought that that was more believable at the time to go with somebody that was just like a con artist. But I think if Hackman didn't play it in such a believable and fun way, then I might have a more of a problem with it. But I enjoyed it for what it is.
It's classic. I can't. I mean, you grow up with something and you watch it for years and years and years. It's hard to imagine anyone else doing it. And then when you see depictions later of those characters, like, you're always going to measure it by the original. I mean, I loved the show. I mean, of course, I caught the show many years after it was off the air, but I watched about every episode of the original show with George Reeves. And, you know, some of the acting is whatever, but it's to the time period, obviously. But yeah, I don't really compare anything to that, but I compare a lot of stuff to this. But yeah, it's classic. And Gene Hackman, on a side note, got paid a lot of money as well, and had a mustache at the time, and refused to shave the mustache. Said he's not going to shave the mustache. Thank God they didn't go all CG Superman lip as they did in the DCEU. That would have sucked. But Richard Donner had to talk him into it, and he said, "Look, I guess this happened over the phone." He said, "Look, if you'll shave your mustache, I'll shave mine." And Hackman's like, "All right, deal." Well, Donner didn't have a mustache, so he put on a fake one. Is the story, and then like peeled it off when the time came. So, yeah, talked him into it. And by the way, Gene Hackman did not shave his head for this movie either. And the only time we see him bald is in the end when Superman's dropping him off at this prison. Hey, I'm just going to drop these guys off and split. Is that okay? And he drops them off. And then when he takes the hair off, it's a skull cap. But he did not want to wear anything like that and refused to shave his head. So every time you see him in the movie with a weird hairstyle, it's his hair just styled to look like a toupee.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that either, actually. Ned Beatty as Otis. The perfect bumbling, yes sir, Mr. Luthor. Just freaking perfect. He is the yes man. He's the idiot. He's the buffoon. He's everything. Like he's Quasimodo here. He's the yes master. I mean, I don't know why this part's in the movie. I guess because he needed someone else to kind of scream at and stuff. I love Ned Beatty in this, man. I just think it's perfect for him.
He,
It's great.
he's part of the package of this version of Luther. He needs a bumbling stooge, and he fits the bill perfectly.
I mean, not for nothing, but he trusted Otis to rewire the nuclear missile, reprogram it. What?
Every time I think of Otis, I think of them breaking out of prison with a hot air balloon in Superman 2, which every time I see that movie, I'm like, how is this the plan? Like, this guy is supposed to be this criminal mastermind, and his plan to break out of jail is a hot air balloon.
Yes. Speaking of plans, I love to hit you with this question whenever we discuss a comic book film or any film that has a villain in it. Talk to me about Lex's master plan to blow California off the map, and now he owns the West Coast. I mean, I've heard dumber plans, but this is pretty weird. What do you think about the master plan of Lex Luthor in this movie?
Oh, it's utterly ridiculous. His plan is real estate, and his plan is to destroy half of the country he could so that he will be a real estate tycoon. Like you could you're in New York, sir. You could get into real estate and make a lot of money without destroying the other coast to do that. It's such a ridiculous plan.
It's terrible. And not to mention, Phil, if he sinks California, the economy's going to go to crap anyway. So how you make money off that? I mean, if the stock market crashes these days because of something on Twitter or whatever, and it loses a ton of money, then yeah, it's my God, can you imagine? It's another depression. Who's going to have money then? How's he even going to have money at that time? I mean,
Come on, man. The greatest criminal mind of our time, Lex Luthor. Which just reminds me of the greatest exchange of
man, I
either
want
of the
that on my
Superman
tombstone. That's what I
movies
want.
is not is not getting mad at him because why do you say such things when you know I will kill you for it? He's like,
That's great.
kill me, Lex Luthor,
Yeah.
and extinguish the greatest criminal mind of our time.
Like Zod's going to immediately backpedal and say, "You know what? You're right. My bad. I shouldn't have went there." Yeah, he's a legend in his own mind. It's fearless. He is fearless. Let's give the character some credit here because he faced down the Man of Steel and didn't blink. I mean, that's pretty freaking awesome. He is not the cowardly villain. I guess he's too smart and too intelligent for that. That is a nice change of pace. I'll give the writing here credit where it's due because he's not a coward. I mean, that's what they had Otis for, right? To be the bumbling coward. But he's not afraid of Superman. I mean, how important is it that Luthor's character in this movie is willing to look him in the eye and smile at him? How important is that for this?
Um, I I think it's a great juxtaposition of how everybody else looks at Superman in the movie once he becomes Superman. How Lois is in awe of him and everybody else is in awe of him, and Lex is just like whatever. He's a guy in my way.
Ah, good point. Yeah, he's not impressed at all either.
No,
Not at all.
no, he's not. And I know a part of the comic depiction is there's some jealousy there, and there's you never get that in this movie. You always feel like he's just like he's an obstacle to Lex. He doesn't see him as anything else.
Yeah, you're right. Totally, totally. We have to mention Jackie Cooper as Perry White. Jackie Cooper, of course, if you're a big time Little Rascal / Our Gang fan, that's where he got his start. Big time. He had a big career in Hollywood as an actor. I thought he was a great Perry White. I thought he fit the role perfectly. Glenn Ford is Jonathan Kent. I mean, what more can you say about Glenn Ford? He was one of the best actors of all time. Great actor. Perfect. I will say this on the record. I think, and it's tough because I think John Schneider did a fantastic job in Smallville. But I find Jackie Cooper's and we didn't get to see him much in this film before he dies in the movie. But man, it feels a lot like Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, doesn't it?
Oh, he does. I feel like his depiction at the beginning of this movie is very important, and it might be because we saw, you know, what another Jonathan Kent could look like in Man of Steel, and how distracting that was. And that's not to say that Kevin
Yes.
Costner was bad, but just this idea of making him into this cynical old man that's just like you can't do anything, don't show anybody you're great. I hated it. I hated it so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's because, Superman could not instill hope in the world if his dad didn't already do that, right? Like
Right.
if he didn't have his parents to raise him a certain way, he wouldn't be Superman.
Right. And if you're raised by a guy who's a downer all the time, and that explains why Henry Cavill is always moody and doesn't smile a whole heck of a lot. And God, dude, yeah, good point. You kind of get whoever's raising the kids, what you're going to get in the end as the story goes. So that's what you're getting. I mean, we don't have to get into a compare contrast here because that's a whole long show. But this movie has so much hope, and it's so light, and it's so charming, and it's so pretty to look at in some of these scenes. I mean, him flying at the time that you couldn't, nothing like that was happening in Hollywood. It looked great. The stuff with him and Margot Kidder had all this chemistry between the two of them, just jumping off the screen, how he's flirting with her, and again, you cannot dislike this guy at all. I don't think there's ever a moment in this movie where it's like, I don't like this guy. Something feels weird. Christopher Reeve is an angel. He's killing it in this movie, and you'll love him. Then you look at Man of Steel, and you're like, it's a different tone. It's dark. It's gritty. It's gray. There's no hope. Like you said, John Kent, hide yourself, hide yourself, hide yourself. I mean, it's just I don't have a pleasant experience watching Man of Steel. I don't have any hope. I don't feel good. I watch it because it's like, oh, let's see what they did with Superman this time, and then the movie's over, and I'm like, wow, that's what they did. But dude, this movie, it's like, man, it's like Man of Steel is night, and this movie's day, and that's how it feels. One's day and one's night, dude. Am I off base here?
Yeah, it's totally night and day. And I mean, maybe it's that we were spoiled with this depiction of Jonathan Kent and other depiction of Jonathan Kent, and like the animated series, I think he's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's other things we've seen him in where he's good, and I just don't enjoy that cynical depiction of him.
Yeah, not at all. I think it affects the whole movie, and actors are going to do what the direction is. They're not going off on their own, depending on who you are. The best actors can ad lib and stuff and get away with it, but for the most part, they're memorizing their lines and repeating their lines, and it's whatever the scene calls for and how it's edited. Editing's a big part of this. Obviously, editing can kill a movie or save it. So if that's the direction and the editing goes with it and everything, that's the movie you're going to get. So yeah, it's night and day. A few things here. I'm going through my notes. I mean, a lot of this was shot. Some of it was shot in Canada. Of course, we see the Statue of Liberty. I don't know. I didn't know Metropolis had a Statue of Liberty. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. It kind of took me out of the moment because I'd forgotten about the statue being in the movie. And so I'm making notes as I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, the Statue of Liberty in Metropolis. I forgot about that. So I guess we don't get an explanation how that happened.
Yeah.
The French people gave it to Metropolis. That's what happened as a gift. So, before we get too deep in the weeds here, John Williams is the master composer of our generation. 150%. No one comes close. That's it, and that's all, period. This guy scored the biggest hits of all time. This guy scored Star Wars, still scored Star Wars. I mean, and couldn't wait to do this movie. I mean, it's amazing. It's the only comic book superhero film to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Music and Original Score until Black Panther in 2018, which is saying something that it took that long for another comic book film to get the kind of accolades that John Williams got for this. Dude, that song, that intro, the Superman theme is as recognizable as Star Wars, as anything I've ever heard. And dude, doesn't it pump you up when you hear it? It's hard to sit still. You're like, man, this song is so cool. It makes you want to sit up straight, and you can just picture the S in your head, man. How cool is this song?
I think this is probably the most iconic superhero theme song ever. It just is. I don't care how many times you hear it, it just ages incredibly well. It just feels like larger than life and triumphant. It feels like everything you would want a Superman theme song to be.
Absolutely. It fits the tone, it fits everything. Oh man, it's just so good. I've got the soundtrack on iTunes, on Apple Music, and sometimes I'll hit what's the word I'm looking for? Shuffle on the songs, and just so I can have a random playlist, it'll pop up out of the blue as I'm driving, and I'll just turn it up. I'm like, I'm not gonna skip it. How do I skip it? I'm gonna turn it up. So can't help it. But you're right. I think it's the most iconic. And there's been some good ones since then. I'm not trying to sell anybody short here, but come on, it's John Williams. It's like saying, well, I found a better overall songwriter slash musician slash entertainer than Prince. Really now, let's hear what full choice you have. Cause man, it's Prince, like to me, it's the same argument. How are you going to tell me that someone's, oh, well, John Williams, forget that guy. What? Shut up. Just great stuff. The three criminals who we only get a glimpse of in this, and I'm talking about them because it's near the beginning. They get banished to the Phantom Zone. We're talking about Nod, Ursa, and General Zod, of course. I mean, this is some heavy foreshadowing of what's to come. And as kids, however old you were when you saw this, folks, we don't know what's going to come, if there's even going to be a part two, and if we do know, we maybe don't know what's going to happen. I mean, what a cool concept to set up part two in the opening scene of part one. That's pretty sweet, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way they did it, I think, and going back to it later, I thought it was great. That depiction of the Phantom Zone will just always be iconic, with just the the flat, what looks like a piece of glass just flipping around in space. It's it just looks iconic. I don't care how many times I see it.
It's great. It's hokey, but it's awesome at the same time. And man, what a death sentence. Like, it's almost like you're trapped as a reflection, and that's all you'll ever be. There's no getting out. That's terrifying. I can't, you know what I mean? That's crazy. And Zod is like yelling at Jor-El, and the elders are saying guilty, guilty. And supposedly Zod basically tried to overthrow the government. That's kind of what a General Zod would do. And charge of maintaining, and they even acknowledged that he was the guy that was in charge of the defense for the planet. So he's a true general, which I don't think I even realized at the time, but a true general, I guess military general. But Brando calls him chief architect of the intended revolution to establish a new order with himself as the ruler. It's funny, Phil, because they're all finding him guilty. And then before Jor-El could speak, Zod says, hey, the vote must be unanimous. And you can condemn us if you wish. You alone will be held responsible. I'll hold you alone responsible. And then he tells Jor-El to join them. He says, your voice will be second in command. He said, second in command next to my own. Like, I'm giving you a great spot in the revolution, man. You could be under me. How cool does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could gush all day about how great he is. To me, he is General Zod. Like,
Yes.
that's a conversation for a Superman 2 movie, but he's just so great. I mean, him yelling at him as he walked away, "One day you'll bow before me, and so will your heirs." And I was like, it's just so great.
It's awesome. Even in the face of certain death, he is petulant, he is defiant, he's egotistical. Terrence Stamp kills it in this, and he's a great villain in part two. I mean, just a great villain. Phantom Zone's everything and then some. It's insane. Did they ever specifically say that the sun is getting too close? Because the only thing Jor-El says is that the planet's going to blow. It's that to ignore it isn't suicide, it's genocide. And one of them looks at him straight face and says, "The planet is merely shifting its orbit." What? Like, what? Isn't that bad too? Like, shifting its orbit can have colossal damage and circumstances and consequences for the entire planet. Did they ever give us a concrete reason as to what's happening with the planet, or are we just told it's going to blow up?
No, I don't think they do. Because I never really understood what happened to Krypton. I just know that it exploded.
Yeah. He even says it's going to happen within 30 days. He's got it narrowed down to 30 days. That's pretty darn good. So they're not going to listen, not going to believe him. And they even say to him that any attempt by you to create a climate of fear and panic among the populace will be deemed an act of insurrection. So, like, if you tell anybody this, we'll hang you. Like, what? I'm trying to help. What do you mean I'll be punished, dude? The elders are kind of suck because like they bring about the end of the planet. Like they had 30 days to evacuate the planet, and Mike could have made some headway to make it happen. But of course, the story is Jor-El didn't have enough time to build a craft big enough to hold the three of them. But in this version, basically, he says that I will remain silent. Neither me or my wife will leave Krypton. Because I guess by leaving, that tells the rest of the populace, why'd he leave? What's wrong? What's he splitting for? So to get around that, he just builds a craft for Kal-El. I mean, it's the time honored tradition. The story of Superman is he's sent away as a child. I mean, talk to me, dude, about Krypton looking like an ice planet to begin with. It looks like Hoth in Empire, right? But like the crystals and everything, and it looks like a big snowflake that he's transported out of as the ship. What about the physical design of this thing, and what did you think about the ship they put him in?
I really liked how Krypton looked. I liked the crystals. I just always liked that aesthetic when I was a kid. Um, I don't know. The spaceship
I
doesn't look
think it
like a
fits.
spaceship. Like I don't know how does
The
it.
whole crystal concept, I love it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works as a spaceship. It just looks like a big floating star.
Well, it can camouflage real easy, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's all shiny and stuff.
Um,
Um,
yeah. Whenever I think of the pod he comes to Earth on, I always think of the Superman animated series pod he comes in on
yeah,
because it just looks like a spaceship.
yeah. Yeah, if there is alien life out there, and I'm pretty sure there is, how do we know it does not a bunch of crystals, man, and Marlon Brando in a big white robe? You don't know.
Yeah, and like glowing foil outfits.
Yes. Which apparently was the same substance used to coat the sticks that they use for lightsabers in the Star Wars movies.
Oh, didn't know that.
The same reflective stuff. So, yeah. And supposedly, if they couldn't touch it, and they sewed like the seamstresses spent all these hours sewing these things into these costumes, and that if you touched it with your bare hands, like it would screw up how the lights reflected for the camera, so you couldn't even touch it. So yeah, that must have been fun getting in and out of. So well, all right. So the baby comes to Earth. The baby's a toddler by the time he gets here, and I think the moment when he lifts the truck is maybe it's one of the coolest moments in this movie. And it's not real, obviously, but dude, I didn't see. I mean, of course, it's probably a crane. It's probably this. It's probably that. It probably wasn't the real back end of anything. It's just a prop. But dude, looking back on it, it looks pretty freaking amazing and epic when that little kid does this.
Yeah, I think that they did a good job with that scene. Some of the other scenes, the effects kind of don't age well, but I think that actually looked good, just like the still shot of it.
What, dude? So, what about the idea of Jor-El is educating his son through the entire trip to Earth? What do you think about that?
Um, yeah, it's weird because I don't know how much of that he actually retains.
Good point. Is it like listening to books on tape when you're asleep, or like learn how to speak Spanish when you're asleep? Does that stuff actually take? I don't know. It's a different way to do it. At least that way they're trying to explain it. That way he doesn't have to cram everything in later, I guess. But um, yeah, I don't know. I think it was a good way to explain it. Put it to you that way, so it makes sense. Let's see what else. So baby comes to Earth. The kids find him. It's the same. It's the same Superman origin that we're all very, very familiar with. And the kids are perfect. Both of them are. Everything's great. I mean, they're just very believable. An older couple find this kid, decide to raise him as their own, and the movie just goes from there. We see him as a young man. He's a teenager, and so the guy that plays him, and I'm sure you know this, but like that's Christopher Reeve doing the guy's voice. They dubbed Chris Reeve into this so it would play out more in terms of the continuity of the film, which I thought it turned out fairly okay. But supposedly this guy spent a lot of time in the makeup artist chair trying to get made to look like Christopher Reeve. So, what do you think about the transformation of this guy, Jeff East, as the teenage Clark Kent?
Um, I think that he, in the very beginning, and where he's very clearly wearing makeup and stuff, he looks too
Mhm.
old to be a teenager. Like every time I see it, I look at it, and he just does not look like a teenager.
And it's cool because when he's out running the train and you see the little girl in the car, that is Noelle Neal, who plays her mother, who played Lois in the original series with George Reeves. And the guy sitting across from her is the original Jimmy Olsen from the show. And the little girl, according to canon, is Lois Lane.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think they fit it to make it work. But yeah, he's out running the train and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought him kicking the football was great. Um, I mean, he was just the right amount of moody, but not like emo and not like tortured and not like I hate my life and I hate you, you're not my real dad and all this other stuff. I think he got just enough of a taste, and if this was all you were going to get, I think it was fine. Um, I thought it was believable enough, but you're right. He does look a lot older than what he's supposed to be. But it is what it is. I like the fact that he outran because football players in movies and TV are always jerks, which I'm not saying they're jerks in real life, but they always are in movies and TV. So, they're jerks to him as well. And of course, he outruns them and say, "How'd you get here so fast?" And he says, "I ran." And of course, John's standing there smiling, like and I was waiting for the Kevin Costner moment to like, "What are you doing? What are you thinking? Have you lost your mind? You can't do this. You can't let people know." And I'm like, "Oh wait, that's not this movie. This is this movie, and no one's mad at each other." So, not to crap on Man of Steel a lot, dude, but this again, the difference is, as we said, is night and day. So the scene where John drops dead's emotional, and he's such a great actor, Glenn Ford is, and it's such a quick moment. But man, when he grabs his arm and says, "Oh no," it's like he knows, he already knows. It's too late, it's over. Like, man, to have that knowledge, like, "Oh no, what's happening?" It was none of that. It was, "Oh no." Bam, it's over. Just that quick. And that of course helps shape Clark into the man he's going to become later. I mean, in every version of Superman where both Kents live, it's fine, I guess. But does Clark need that death to help shape him in terms of I have to let go of this now and go be my own man? Isn't it important that his father pass in the story?
Uh, I think so, in the sense that I think it's kind of this moment where he has to, at least momentarily, leave his life on the far behind and go seek out his real father and see where he's really from.
And one of the great moments when they're at the graveyard there is he says, "All these powers, all these things I can do, and I couldn't even save him." And that comes back later, right? But like, uh, that's a great line. Like, and that to me, and I'm gonna get your take on this. That to me sets up what this character is. The idea of, and in my opinion, the Zack Snyder crew ran with it too far south. Well, he's tortured because he can do all these great things, but he can't do this, and he can't stop people from dying, and he can't save the woman he loves, and he can't, you know what I mean? Like, But isn't that like the inner turmoil of this of Superman? Is like he can do all this stuff, but like a god, he cannot affect free will. He cannot make people like him. He cannot make people not be afraid of him. He can't make anyone do anything. He could, be the Superman from Injustice, I guess, and rule with an iron fist, but he still can't make people do things. I mean, isn't that like the sort of the tortured part of this character is that no matter what he can do at the end of the day, he's stuck in the confines of humanity, which means he can only do so much.
Yeah, I think that there's I think a part of his dad dying and him realizing that he cannot fix everything, and that's something that everybody has to learn. But this is somebody that can do in his mind anything, and I think everything he learns at home on the farm is that it grounds him, and it doesn't ground him in a way that makes him less optimistic and less hopeful. Um, but it just grounds him in reality. And so, like you said with the Snyder movies, I mean, having him die in a tornado is the most contrived thing I've ever seen in a movie. And it's different than your father just died of natural causes. Um, it what can you do about that? That's just life. People are going to die.
That's a good point because the way they killed him in Man of Steel, he could have saved him had he just not listened to the guy when he said, "Just stand still and watch me get swept away." You can't let him know. Just watch this. Hey, Clark, watch this.
Yeah, he just puts his hands up.
Yeah.
No, and shakes his head. It's such a horrible scene, man. I hated it. Oh, I hated it.
Hey, Clark, don't turn your head or nothing. Stand there as I die, Clark, and watch this. Hold my beer,
I
Clark.
have to teach you this lesson.
Yeah.
Watch me die.
Watch me, Clark. I can only do this once, so be sure you watch, Clark. Watch it. Clark, don't turn away, Clark. Watch. It's kind of macabre if you really think about it. Like, it's, I
And I
don't know.
think it's also that he jumps out of the car to save the dog before that.
Yes.
So it's like, hey, I could go and save this dog, but nope, don't save me. What?
It's like, look, Clark, we all love the dog. By all means, save that dog. But no, I'm going to stand here, Clark. Just watch me. Watch me die, Clark. It's just all kinds of messed up. Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting. So we know how the story goes, kids. Obviously, he goes to the Fortress of Solitude. He knows who he is, or he finds out who he is. Jor-El talks to him from beyond the beyond. And basically, I found this interesting because I'd forgotten this little nugget. When he tells him that for Earth's time, he's been dead for thousands of years. Like, I guess time and space is measured differently in another galaxy. But like, I don't know if we've ever, because it's a lot of ground to cover, dude. So I'm not going to make myself, go nuts over this or anything. But I don't remember another comic book or sci-fi property where it's like, well, it's been 1,000 years since I saw you last because time's different here in space and when we get to that planet. But like, it's kind of an interesting concept that like how we measure time, how you people on Earth measure time is far different than how we do it here, which is to suggest that Superman at this point in the movie is probably, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 years old. Like, I'd forgotten all about that part, man.
Yeah, because I mean, it would have you'd have to you had to estimate the amount of time it took for his spaceship to make it all the way to Earth. Um, and space travel takes a long time. Um,
Very true.
but I think it's also that he was. I've always took it to be that he was kind of in suspended animation in his pod,
Ooh,
and that's
good
why he
call.
didn't age faster.
And they age differently. Kryptonians do. Kryptonians do. Kryptonians, I suppose. And something else when he's telling Laura, because this is something else I picked up on. I don't think Jor-El ever says he will get strength from their yellow sun. Like on Krypton, none of them have powers. None of them are strong. None of them are faster than a speeding bullet because they have a red sun. But somehow he knew that with a yellow sun, he was going to be like a cell, like it's like a solar panel. He was going to be able to absorb all this energy, and it was going to make him strong and fast. And somehow he knew that. But I don't think they flat out said it in those words in this movie, did they?
No, I don't think they do.
Yeah, it's crazy. Did you know? Tidbit here for you. Christopher Reeve turned down The Running Man and Total Recall.
No, I didn't know that.
Crazy. Dude, he's such a good actor. Those movies would have been fine with him. I like Arnold, but good God, he would have killed. Dude, Christopher Reeve in The Running Man, that would have been amazing to see.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
he would have killed that.
yeah, no doubt. So he gets to the planet, and of course, he becomes a star reporter. We don't really find out if the guy went to college. I don't think they ever cover that. How you can just walk into the city's biggest newspaper and become a reporter overnight. They never bother explaining that, which I'm okay, I guess. It's
Well, he
fine.
did. Remember, Perry White says that he's not only, he not only has a great he has a great mind for news, but he might be the fastest typist I've ever seen.
Oh, well, there you go. If that's all it takes, Phil.
It was something that I'm misremembering, but he said some
No,
other
that's
things
it.
before that. But he also said he was the fastest typist he ever seen.
I mean, if that's all it takes, I got a future because I can type pretty darn fast. So, and if all I got to do is buy a fedora and put the word a press card in the fedora band, I could do that too. Um, yeah, I don't lose much sleep over that. It's okay. It is what it is. I mean, I think the first interaction he has with Lois is that Perry tells her that he's giving her the city beat, which was her beat. And Clark's telling her about, send half my check to this address. And she's like, my guess is to your white haired old mother. And he says, no, actually, she's silver haired. And she says, any more home like you? And he goes, no, not really. I love that. The way he delivers that line. Again, it's a wink and a nod. It's freaking perfect, man. That first exchange between them, sparks are already flying. So it's going to be interesting for these two, man. That's some good stuff. Um, so when we finally see him sort of embracing who he is, and we have that moment in the alley, and he catches the bullet, but he has to faint. He tells her that he fainted and all this other stuff. And, give him the purse. It's not worth you getting hurt over. And plus, he knows exactly what's in her purse because he looked through the bag, obviously. Dude, he's dropping hints left and right of who he is, whether he means to or not. And none of that comes across. So, answer this for me definitively. If this guy were in the same room with you and he was a colleague or whatever, and then you saw Superman's face on the news, would your suspension of disbelief be so great? Because when you look at Clark, you think Clark's a nice guy, but he's kind of a Nimrod. He doesn't mean to be. He's got a big heart, but man, this guy's got 2 left feet. He's way too old fashioned to be believed. He's way too charming to be believed. And every time there's trouble, he runs like hell. He runs to hide. I mean, are you buying the fact that he's not Superman, or can you just look at them and say, nope, nope, that's him with glasses or without glasses?
Um, I think you can buy it. I think because he sells this idea that he's so unassuming and he's so meek, and yeah, I think it works. Like visually, if you look at him, he's this tall, hulking man, but he kind of he kind of disguises that by being, so clumsy and then slumping his shoulders and being, kind of timid. I think it works.
I do too. And I'm one of those guys who have made jokes over the years because it's like, oh, let me guess, the glasses are the only disguise that's so stupid. But having grown up and looking on this as the art form that I consider it to be, I mean, I can completely envision a world in which he's right under your nose and you never know it. I think that's a better story is the fact that he's always been right there and none of them, they couldn't see past their personal feelings of him and their disbelief of him being anything special at all. I think there's something deeply psychological to this that I don't think they intended on going for, but they're doing it anyway.
Yeah, so the only thing that doesn't make sense to me, that's never made sense to me as a kid and still doesn't as a grown up, is how the heck does he cover up this bright blue shirt under a white button up shirt? How do
Mm,
you not see this big bright Superman logo under a white shirt?
that's yeah. Well, he never takes the tire of the blazer off, right? The suit coat. But that's a deeply white shirt. Is that what you're saying? It's extremely white shirt.
Yes.
That's a great question. Here's a better one. When he like sits on the ledge of the office window and then like falls out of it, and then in mid flight he just changes and he's suddenly wearing the suit. Like I guess you can say, well, he's so fast. Yeah, but where's his clothes?
Yeah, where does clothes go? I mean, he does the same thing when he goes in that revolving door and he goes around and comes back out, and you don't know where his clothes are.
Yeah.
He does things like that several times in the Donner Superman movies that don't really make sense, and you just kind of accept it. I mean, of course, the him throwing him throwing the logo at the bad guys in the second movie.
Oh, the second movie. It's like cellophane or whatever.
I always thought that was weird, even before they made fun of it in Family Guy. But yeah,
Yeah.
I used to see it as a kid and go, "What is that? What was that?"
Yeah, but like it was an illusion, right? Because what wasn't it non he hit it with, and then after a second or two, it's like he's wrestling, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, it's such a weird scene.
It is like of all the things, like a Jedi mind trick. Well, it's not really happening, but it is. And it's not at the same time. Yeah. Um. So one of the big scenes that we get fairly early, and we don't get Superman in this movie till like 40 minutes in, I think it is, before we even get him in the suit. Like that's I mean, you're laying the groundwork and building the foundation of this character and his story and everything. That's pretty cool. But the helicopter scene has also been the subject of some criticism over the years because when she falls off the top of that building, off the top of out of the helicopter, and he catches her. I mean, dude, I've heard it said. I don't know where I heard this over the years, many times, but the rate at which she's falling and the rate that he catches her, the rate of speed, would have killed her instantly on the impact of her being caught because the force of which she suddenly stopped would have killed her of the impact just him catching her. Like, what do you think about this scene, man? Have you ever looked at this? Are you looking back on it like, oh, come on? Do you just accept it for what it is? Like, he's on one hand he's got Lois, on the other hand he's got the helicopter at the same time.
No, because I think it's supposed to be very intentionally cartoonish and unbelievable. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just the fact he catches the helicopter with one hand like that and just keep flying back up with no hesitation. Like there's no, he doesn't jerk back or nothing. He just catches it with one hand and just keeps moving.
Yeah,
It looks ridiculous, but that's a part of the illusion of the movie.
yeah, and he's just crazy strong, kids. What can we tell you? Something else I didn't know about, but I found out during my research here. The helicopter scene was intended to be shot on the top of what was then the Pan Am building until a real life accident on the heliport killed several passengers as well as a pedestrian from a falling helicopter blade on May 16th, 1977. So they did not film it on top of the Pan Am building. So would have been incredibly bad taste, folks. Originally, the helicopter scene was simply going to have Superman save Lois from falling, but Richard Donner decided to have the helicopter drop, and the modified scene was then referred to as the double jeopardy scene, which means Superman had to do both. I thought one of the coolest moments, one of the funniest bits in this whole scene is when he's trying to find a place to change, and he runs up on that phone booth. It's like a half. It's not a booth. It's just a payphone, and he gives it the once over up and down as if to say, "Crap, I can't change here." What a great throwback that is to the original TV show, man.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And then, of course, him coming out and changing, and the random pimp coming out and going, "Man, that is a bad suit, boy." It's like, what? Where did this go from?
Can I be honest? I think the way you delivered that line was better than what we got. And I grew up with the line, so I've always thought it was hilarious. But uh, say Jim, woo, like a Ric Flair woo. That's good stuff. And then, of course, the only thing Superman says is "excuse me" because he's always polite. Um, yeah, it kind of feels a little. We started off saying there's some things that are dated in this movie. I'm like, that's a little dated, maybe. I don't know if there was any ill will meant behind it, but it kind of feels, eh, it is what it is, I guess. But um, he when he catches her, he says, "Easy, miss, I've got you," and she does a double take and says, "You've got me. Who's got you?" Another very quotable line from this movie. I loved it. I thought her reaction was great. And when he drops her off in the building, she says, "Who are you?" And he says, "A friend." And then we get like the montage of him doing random stuff around the city, random heroics. I mean, this within the span of just 2 or 3 minutes sets the tone for what this character becomes for the city of Metropolis. It didn't take long. It did everything it needed to do. He was charming. He was heroic, and it didn't take 20 minutes. It did everything it had to do in a very short amount of time. And I thought it was perfect what the montage we got after this helicopter scene.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to that. To the montage we got in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where we see
Yeah.
Spider-Man doing all these heroic and down to earth things. He's doing these big things like stopping robberies, but he's also doing small things like getting a cat out of a tree.
Yeah.
And it's something that just seems like so. It seems so dated to that time period and that idea of superheroism. Um,
Mhm.
but it's something so wholesome about it that you can't even really like get that annoyed with it. Like, this looks unrealistic, but it just works for what it was. It worked for the time.
And I think it develops a pattern where it's showing he cares about everybody. He's not just here for, the federal offenses and the life-changing, life-saving moments. He's here for everything. If you need something, you yell loud enough, he can hear you, he's going to come help you. I mean, that's superhero in my book. I think that works. And dude, I like that you mentioned Spider-Man cuz man, this guy starts sounding like Peter Parker after a while because what he says to the guy climbing the side of the building, like Spider-Man, "Hi there, something wrong with the elevator?" Just as charming as he could possibly be. And then when he drops the guy off from the street to the cop, he says, "They say confession is good for the soul. I'd listen to this man." That's freaking great. Like, it's so perfect. And then, like, he tells the cop, "Take him away." And he does that like twice, like Vader in this movie, "Take him away." But man, he's kind of a smartass in this movie a little bit, isn't he?
Um, I just think it goes back to what I said. He was just so confined in
Yeah.
watching the world from this point of an equipment manager and just this guy that could not intervene. And now we've got this guy that can intervene and he can do what he wants and say what he wants. And it's I think you see how much good is in him because he just saw the world in a different way. Like, it's kind of like if you're sitting in a room and you see all these people and you just observe for so long and then you finally get to be like, all right, well, I can step in. And it's a really cool way of establishing his character, I think.
Yeah, and I just think it fits. I just think everything in these moments fits. I just think it's perfect, and I think it's like you said. It's almost like he is being the kid he didn't get a chance to be, and he's maybe showing off, but not in a bad, you know, prideful way, but just showing off and finally getting to help someone when he was never allowed to before. That's a great take, man. I think that's perfect. So another big moment in the movie, we got to talk about this too, is the whole "can you read my mind" stuff when she goes flying with him. Again, we forgive a lot of stuff because it's Superman, it's great, and it's stuff we grew up with, and we still think it's amazing. But when they're up high enough above the clouds, and he kind of lets her go by just one hand, and she's like gliding the air and like kind of flying. I mean, it's a little weird, right?
It's 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 very weird, man. It's when I watched it this time, I just kept thinking of Aladdin, the whole new world.
Oh my god, it's so good.
That's what it thought. That's what it reminded me
That's
of
so
when I was
good.
watching. I was like, this is just so hokey and corny, and you just wouldn't think about it at the time when most of us saw it as kids. But today, I was just looking at it like, yeah, this is this is such a weird. And then on top of that, you get the lowest monologue over it, and it's like, okay,
Dude, she supposedly was going to sing a song over that. Margot Kidder
oh
was,
my
but they didn't
god,
like how her voice sounded, so they cut it and just had her read the lyrics or read the words.
yeah, I'm glad they did that.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, it's a little hokey, but the conversation is gold when they're sitting there before he takes her flying, and he's God, dude, he is flirting with this girl. I've never had the guts that he has in this scene. I've flirted before, okay, but I'm just looking at him like, God, this guy's fearless. Talk about Lex being fearless. I mean, he's sitting across from this girl that he's obviously developing feelings for, and he's fearless in front of her. Like he's flirting. It's great. So I can't, I can't I can't let that go. It's so good. I mean, it's just great stuff. But like that forgives it for me. In other words, that's just that fixes it for me. The stuff that happens immediately after he brings her back, that fixes it for me too. And it's funny because she's going to go flying with him. He offers to take her flying. And it's funny because he mentions like Peter Pan, because she's like, can you fly like Peter Pan or something, or and to something to that effect. And he goes, Peter Pan flew with children, Lois. Like he's still, because she's like, my friend Clark, Clark would say that you're a figment of someone's imagination. He goes, Clark? And she goes, oh, he's nobody. I'm like, great. Now you're just a dagger to the heart for this guy. Oh, he's nobody. But really, I guess if he's trying to stay hidden, he's okay with her thinking that he's nobody because he doesn't need her to suspect anything, right? So that kind of works out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that is funny because she doesn't know that he's Clark, but I just think him deadpanning it and going, Clark, who's Clark?
Yeah, it's good stuff. And when they're like she's interviewing him, like kind of talking to him, and she's asking him to, what color underwear am I wearing? And he can't see because of the lead planter. As soon as she walks away, he interrupts her and says, pink. And he points down, though she goes back to the lead planter so he can't see anymore. Like the back and forth between them is great. And when he tells her, I never lie, he makes a point to say her name, Lois. And she turns around. He's like, I never lie. And I'm thinking that line delivered by any other actor would have been hokey. But dude, when he said it, you're like, it's great. It's so great. So perfect. That's completely Superman. Like that's exactly what he would say. I mean, you've established, because he tells her, she says, why are you here? And he says, I'm here to fight for truth, justice, and the American way, which sounds in 2021 incredibly old fashioned and hokey. But at the time it was perfect, and it's still perfect. I think it's great that he pulls that off. And like, I don't know. I keep gushing about Christopher Reeve because he's so freaking amazing. Um, but yeah, he says, who's Clark, your boyfriend? And she goes, no, he's nobody. He says, Peter Pan flew with children, Lois, in a fairy tale. That's great stuff. That's great stuff. When they come back, and dude, I didn't know this either. When they come back and she is standing on the balcony and the camera's at her back and he flies off, he is not there. It's all one continuous shot. And what's in front of her is a giant screen of Christopher Reeve flying away, because it's in one shot. If you remember, the second she turns around and she goes, what a Superman. Like that's original. And then she goes, wait, Superman. And then you hear the doorbell and it's Christopher Reeve at the front door that quick. That's how he was there that quick. That the camera never cut, which I thought was great. These days you can pull that off with CG and it's not a problem, or seamlessly add a cut where no one can tell. But I found that pretty interesting that they managed to pull that off. A lot of the camera tricks they used in this movie, dude, were ahead of their time for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. So the story that she writes, kids, is titled "I Spent the Night with Superman." It's not risque at all. Um, but it's Lois, and it's how she writes, and she makes no apologies, and she's not scared of anybody or anything. So let her say what she wants, I suppose. But what the funny part is, Phil, he kind of put all his cards on the table. In one story, in one interview, you found out the name of the planet he's from, um, uh, what his powers are, what he can't do, and what he can't see through, and what he's here for. Like, did he show too many cards? Because this is how Lex figured out how to kill him.
Yeah, I didn't think
Yeah.
about it that way.
Because he's reading the story and he's like, I mean, you basically gave him a game plan because he's already planning to kill him that quick. And dude, we did not mention Valerie Perrine as Miss Teschmacher. Miss Teschmacher! So it's great. You got to have her, man. She's great. Because like she's kind of like the bimbo character, but she's kind of really sweet, and you kind of feel like she's in over her head with somebody she shouldn't be hanging out with. Did she find her way away from him in part 2? Because I cannot remember. What's her fate?
Doesn't she leave him by the end of the movie?
I think
'Cause
so.
didn't she turn
but I
on him
can't remember
basically?
I thought she did, but I can't remember how she does it. Yeah, she doesn't need him. He's bad news. He's super villain. But I mean, folks, we know what's coming next. I mean, anyone that's a fan of this, you know that his grand plan, as we said earlier, is blow California off the map. He's bought up all this useless real estate, and we're getting to another epic moment. And I'm trying to single out the big epic moments of this movie. But the epic moment when Larry Hagman pulls up for My Dream of Jeannie in Dallas. No, that's not the epic moment. Although Larry Hagman is in this movie. Various weird cameos in this film too, by the way. But the moment when when Lois dies, and dude, talk to me about the death scene when her car is going down. As a kid, that was vicious to me, man. It looks, I can't say real, but it looks so heinous. Like she is choking to death under the weight of this dirt that's falling in her car. Man, there's no blood or anything, but to me, that's a gruesome death in this movie, isn't it? Am I overselling this or what?
It is very gruesome, and I think it's just the way that Margot screams throughout most of the scene, and it just makes it seem even worse.
Yes.
Yeah, it is very gut wrenching scene to watch.
Do you make it that intense because of what happens a few minutes later to make you want him to do that? You had to make it that bad?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it holds the right emotional weight. Because this is Lois Lane. Like, I mean, even if we don't know anything about the original depictions of Lois Lane and Superman, it's still like a big deal that Lois died on film and he wasn't able to save her.
Oh yeah. Has that happened before? That didn't happen in Superman Returns, did it?
No.
Yeah. Maybe we'll cover that movie one day. That's a whole other podcast, kids. A lot of great intentions and the best of intentions on that film, and a lot of it fitting tribute and to some degree, another degree, way too much, way too on the nose. But that's another show for another time. The moment in question, Phil, is when she dies and the dam is and what he got to save Jimmy, because Jimmy's always getting screwed up and getting falling off stuff. So he's got to save Jimmy, and he's saving everybody. He saved the town. He's pushing boulders off to dam the river. The dam is busted. All this other stuff. Water's gushing, and it's because the nuclear warhead's hit, obviously. And when Lois dies, and dude, he pulls her out of that car. Dude, tears in my eyes. I can't help it because he feels it so much. And he's looking at her as if to say, oh my God, I cannot believe this happened. her? Why? Like, just that look, like this is the last thing he ever could have expected. He knew he was going to get there in time. He just knew he was, because he's Superman and he's very fast and he saves everyone all the time. But he couldn't get there, and Christopher Reeve kills it. He kisses her and then is heartbroken with nothing when nothing happens. That'll pay off in part two. But they're, again, dude, they're sowing the seeds for part two in this movie already. All right, so the moment when he stands up and screams, and it's freaking awesome, and he flies up, and suddenly he sees Jor-El. He hears Jor-El telling him, "We're forbidden to. It's forbidden to interfere in mankind or interfere in humanity. You can't do it." All this other stuff, and then he hears John Kent talking to him, and then he does the thing, because the line is it's forbidden to alter human history and or interfere, whatever it is. And so then he does the thing, Phil, where he flies around the planet in the opposite direction a whole bunch, and suddenly he reverses time, and then he stops and then flies a few more ways the other direction, just enough to where none of this stuff with, I guess, the missiles ever happened. Is that what we're led to believe?
Yes, he went back before any of that happened. Um, yeah, that's one of the things I don't enjoy about the Donner movies. Him being able to go back in time by changing the access of the Earth, because I, just how does that work? That just doesn't make sense.
How far back did he go? Like, he went back. I
um,
mean,
yeah,
how far back did he go? Because I can't wrap my head around it.
they don't really explain it. Yeah, they don't really explain it.
Hmm.
But yeah, it just I don't like that about the Donner films. Like I could suspend disbelief in some of the other more hokey things in these movies, but that was just one of the things about the first two movies that I just never liked.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I bought it as a kid because the Superman, he's awesome. He's great. I loved him. But yeah, this part for me doesn't hold up very too awful much. As if we're sitting here knowing how time travel works, Phil. As if we have any freaking clue if it's even possible, and we're gonna bag on this movie. For all we know, dude, they nailed it with this. This is exactly how time travel works. How do we know this?
Yeah,
Hey, to be fair,
yeah, maybe that's how it works. It's not like one of us can try it.
well, I mean, we could hope, could work hard, keep working hard, get your cardio up. Maybe one day, you know. Yeah, and what brings this home for me is when he gets back there, she is in the car and it won't start, but there's no fault line opening up this time. And he shows up and he goes, "Hi, don't bother. I think it's dead." And so she gets out and starts ranting and is mad at him because he wasn't there to help her. And I'm like, this is freaking perfect that Lois Lane's ticked off at him, not knowing what just happened to her in another reality or whatever we want to call it now. But I mean, if she'd got out of that car and had goo goo eyes over him, it wouldn't have been the same. She has to get out and be irritated. I think it was freaking great. And of course, he's going to lean in for a kiss. And because Jimmy Olsen screws everything up, title of my next book, Jimmy Olsen screws everything up. He ruins it. They don't get to kiss. And it's like, it's funny because he flies away. And Jimmy says, "It's too bad Mr. Kent wasn't here to see all this." And she goes, "Poor Clark, he's never around when Superman is." It's the first time we kind of see her piecing things together. She's an ace reporter, Phil. It took her a long time. Because again, she can't imagine this guy's anything other than what he says he is, meaning Clark Kent.
I mean, she bought several other things, like him catching the bullet in the alley and pretending he fainted.
True.
And then he told her exactly what was in her purse, and she was just like, "Oh,
She's, "How did you know?" He was, "Lucky guess." Because like a credit card, keys, a tissue, or a Kleenex, and something else, chewing gum. And that was all was in her purse. Phil, it's not a real movie when it's a woman's purse and she doesn't have makeup, a compact, or not a cell phone, but uh, various different breath mints. There's a notebook, there's a hairbrush, there's hair clips, there's you know. So there's my suspension of disbelief out the window as well. What about flying to the prison with Lex and Otis, but not really saying what it. I mean, can we do this kind of thing? Can we just drop dudes off at a prison and say, here you go, Warden, take them away?
Yeah, no, no due process. No, no nothing. No, doesn't tell them what they did or anything. Yeah, here, just throw these guys in jail.
Like, why are you here, Superman? Look at them. Can you not tell how dangerous they look?
Yeah, just lock these guys up.
Yep. Trust me, I'm Superman. That's the tagline. Trust me. Hey, what could go wrong? I'm Superman. So, and of course, Lex has to deliver his line, his patented line, because he takes that hairpiece off, and there he is. And the warden says, "This this country is safe again thanks to you." No, sir, don't thank me, warden. We're all part of the same team. So Superman flies up above the earth, and in something that didn't happen in movies too often, Phil, he acknowledges the camera. He smiles at the camera. That brings this whole thing home for me because his smile is very infectious and makes him even more lovable in that moment. And you're like, when that movie goes off, you're like, that's Superman. I couldn't write anything any better. I couldn't watch anything any better. That is Superman. Like, dude, at the end of this movie, I'm like, yeah, they did 2, 3, and 4. 4 never should have happened, right? You could argue 3 never should have happened, but that's another show for another time. But like, if you never followed this up, it would have been fine because I don't know how you follow this up. I mean, this was, whew,
It
what
remind
a
me, is
movie.
3 the one with Richard Pryor? Or is that 4?
That was 3, and I love Richard Pryor, but the story was so bad.
3 is
Like,
so bad. 3 is so
oh,
bad.
in another world with a script, Pryor could act. He never got enough credit for what he could do. Like, but totally miscast in this role. The script was bad. It was not good.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
Four is the one with Nuclear Man, right?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
the quest for peace. Yeah, yeah, man. A lot of stuff that I mean, we just kind of glaze over a lot of this stuff, but man, again, this is a classic for me, dude. I just don't. Is this, and this is gonna be hard to answer now, after the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is this still the greatest comic book film of all time, or is it top 5? Is it top 3? Is it number 2? What do you think?
I think that it belongs on the list of greatest comic book movies of all time, just because, like you said earlier, that so many other comic book movies tried to repeat what this movie did. There are
Mm-hmm.
so many other takes on it that were either similar or very clearly like a retread of it. It's absolutely one of the most influential comic book movies of all time. Even if you don't want to say it's the best, it's absolutely one of the most influential.
And we've covered this a whole bunch with the DC Extended Universe stuff, and I'm not trying to throw us on another 30-minute tangent here. But after having reviewed this film now and talked about it, why is it so hard? Is it because Christopher Reeve was one of a kind? Is it because it was the right story, right actor, right year, right director? Is it some of that? Is it all of that? Why can't we get this right now?
Well, I think that the world is kind of different too. It's not the 80s anymore. And everybody feels like everything has to have this deep, dark backstory to it. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it could just be what it is. And sometimes you can add realism to a movie and still, give it wonder and hope. I mean, I said that about the Shazam movie. The Shazam movie had the dark parts in it, like the stuff with his mother, but it's still at its heart a good movie that the whole family can watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's maybe it's just the right mix. Maybe it's just the stars and planets lined up in just the right fashion, just the right direction for everything to work the way it was supposed to. I don't know how to answer the question either. I ask myself the question all the time. Well, for kids, that's Superman the movie. And if for some weird reason you call yourself a comic book fan but have never seen this movie, first of all, shame on you. Second, go watch this freaking film. You'll thank us for it later. Phil, bring this thing home for me, my friend. What is your last word on Superman the movie?
Man, even if you can't get past some of the dated things about this movie, things like the soundtrack, the iconic theme song, Christopher Reeve's iconic portrayal will always make this, one of the quintessential superhero movies, in my opinion.
Absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Superman the movie is fantastic. It's great watch. You can't call yourself a fan of the genre. In my opinion, if you're a fan of movie making in general, you're going to appreciate this movie. And even if you're not into superhero stuff, I think everyone can take something away from this movie. I think there's a real spirit to it. There's a humanity to it. Um, there's a lot of great things about this film. There's more positives than there are negatives for sure, for sure. And again, it's a classic. Definitely one of the greatest comic films of all time, if not the best of all time. And there's a lot more to come, folks. I'm sure we're probably not done with Superman, the DCEU. We can only hope one day we'll get something a tenth as good or close, or the spirit. Let's recapture something. There's stuff here to work with, folks. Some of these books are great. Just a matter of, again, right director, right actor, right screenplay, right cast, right situation at the right time. Maybe one day, but in the meantime, there'll never be another one of these. And that is Superman the movie. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.